Is the prosecutor understanding what her job is supposed to be? Because some of these witnesses that they're calling, especially the babysitter today, seem like they're testing in favor of the defense, not the prosecution. Day 7 of Lindsay Clancy's trial wrapped up on Wednesday. It's a great day for a great day. My name is Sydney Rushing. I'm a criminal defense attorney in the state of Michigan. Now let's talk about it. First things first, I'm going to let you know that today was a short day. It was said yesterday that it was going to be a short day, so it's not a surprise that today was only going to go until 1 o'clock. Witness number 41, Eaton Negri, was called to the stand, and he's a physician's assistant, and he helped treat Lindsay at Brigham and Women's Hospital. He helped treat the cuts that were on her wrist. He said that they didn't need surgical repair, but there was one on her right wrist that did require some sutures. The jury was shown a picture of the sutured wrist. There's also one on her left wrist that did require one suture. And don't worry, the jury got to see a photo of that one too. None of the cuts were deep enough to breach the subcutaneous fat of the skin. Cross-examination, he said that yes, Lindsay Clancy was critically ill. He then confirmed about the cuts being deep or superficial. Now, one thing they did talk about was the blood that was being taken out of Lindsay, and he said he was aware that they were taking blood out of her chest via tubes. He also confirmed that Lindsay coded. And witness number 42, Nicholas Roberts, was called to the stand, and he worked in the state crime lab toxicology unit. He tested Lindsay's blood, plasma, and urine for alcohol, and it tested negative. And then he said when he tested it for benzos, it was positive for benzos, to which he said there was like 4 to 5 of them present. When asked about the levels of the benzos that were in her system, he responded that they were high enough to be reportable. He explained that benzos are central nervous system depressants. One thing to note is that he couldn't say whether the 5 that showed up were from one medication or multiple medications. On cross-examination, the defense is asked if he was aware whether they were, drawn on one day or over a multiple course of days, and he said he didn't know. He was flat out asked if there was a lot of drugs in her system, and he responded like, yeah, that's quite a few. And then clarified it that he has seen more though. Witness number 43 was Dr. Justin Brower, who works at the NMS lab as a toxicologist. He received Lindsay Clancy's samples and they did a direct test, and the result of those tests were as follows. There was lamictal, which is 6.1 milligrams per milliliter. That's an anti-seizure, and it's also used to treat bipolar disorder. There was Remeron, which was 200 nanograms per milliliter. He said that it's an antidepressant. There was Seroquel, which had 1,800 nanograms per milliliter. It's an antipsychotic, which can be used in low doses to treat insomnia. And then there was Trazodone. There was 0.44 micrograms per milliliter, and that's an antidepressant. I also give Trazodone, the dog version, to my dog, and it helps calm his anxiety down. But that's neither here nor there. He said that the Seroquel was at an elevated level. Prosecutor then asked him about the levels and the levels that could be deemed toxic or, lead to unaliving yourself with those levels. And he basically said that all of Lindsay's level were therapeutic concentration, but the Seroquel was a little bit high. He said that the levels did not seem toxic or unalivable. He literally said that people will take like a handful of medication to try and unalive themselves, and he said that that's just not present here. He said the benzos literally tested in like the lower than lower therapeutic or therapeutic levels, not like an elevated level. On cross-examination, the defense attorney was like, well, can this tell you the whole story? And he responded, no, it doesn't. When asked about the medications, he said that they were in therapeutic level, aka they were being taken as they were supposed to. He clarified that the Seroquel was double what it should be, but it was not at a toxic level or unalivable level. Then the judge again explained what stipulations are, and that Clancy had stipulated basically that the DNA found on the bands belonged to the children and which one it was contributed to. So she literally stipulated to just that, so that way they don't have to come and prove all that. And witness number 44, Katerina Stashin, was called to the stand, and she works at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab. She testified about the DNA testing. She then went through the testing of the yellow band and the contributors, and they tested amongst the whole family, Patrick, Lindsay, and then the 3 kids, and Dawson was the main contributor. The black band, they could test the middle of it, and they said that the major contributor of that was Cora, but they couldn't test the handles because there was 5 or more contributors to it. She then said that the blood-stained shingles at the back of the house most certainly had Lindsay Clancy's DNA on them. And then the last witness of the day, the nanny, was called to testify, and her name is Elaine Rossi. She testified about how she saw the post on Facebook from Lindsay. They went and met. She went to the backyard. She got to hold Callan and watch the kids and kind of like talk about what her duties would be with the family. She said that she started in September, but originally the plan was for her to start in November after Lindsay was going back to work, and she basically was going to be taking care of Callan during that time. Her primary roles were to, take care of Callan, some light housework, some light meal prep, the normal nanny things, which I will point out, since becoming a mother, I didn't realize that now like contact contracts are like very specific in things. It's not just you hire help and, you know, they help around the house. You got to be very specific. So anyways, let's move on. She talked about how Lindsay worked 3 days a week from 8:30 to 1, and that's when she would be there. Sometimes she would cross paths with Lindsay. Sometimes Lindsay would be there when she got there. Sometimes she wouldn't. Either she was taking the kids to school or she was exercising, but that they basically communicated via text or through the notebook that Lindsay left on the counter. To which then the jury got to see that, and basically Rossi's like, yeah, these are the notes that, you know, detailed his sleep, his food, his routine, things like that. She said that she was left at one time with, you know, all 3 kids, but mostly like when she would get there, Cora and Dawson would be leaving for school. Then for whatever reason, the prosecutor felt it was necessary to play a video of Rossi feeding Callan a bottle. Don't know why. The defense objected, but the judge let it come in. I don't know the relevance. She said that in October, she took Dawson and Cora to a gymnastics class because Lindsay couldn't drive, and she offered and said, well, Lindsay didn't give me a reason, but I offered to do it. She said specifically that she knew that Lindsay was going through postpartum and was struggling with it. She noted she didn't really see a change between Lindsay from when she started in September to when she ended in December. She wasn't aware of Lindsay going to the hospital a few times, and when asked if she was worried about Lindsay with the children, she said no, she was a wonderful mother. She said in November that Patrick and Lindsay went for a walk, and when they came back, they let her know that they were gonna have to let her go because Lindsay was not gonna go back to work as planned. The prosecutor then had her describe the children's personalities, and she gave wonderful descriptions of them. And then one of the final questions from the prosecutor is if she had any concerns about the children's safety, and she said no. On cross-examination, the defense attorney had her confirm that she told, you know, investigators that she was a loving and doting mother. Then they talked about the book that the prosecutor keeps making a big deal about, and about how Lindsay, you know, kept very detailed track. The defense attorney asked her if he thought that her laying this schedule out and laying these things out was overwhelming or overbearing, and she said not at all, and that she thought that they were appropriate. The defense attorney then asked her if she loved Lindsay, and she said, do I love Lindsay? I did love Lindsay, yes. And then on redirect, the prosecutor asked her if Lindsay had ever told her that she was having these intrusive thoughts or terrible feelings, and she said no, that she did not tell her those things. And that wrapped up day 7 of Lindsay Clancy's trial. Thank you for being here, and thanks for following along. And here's the question of the day. Do you think the prosecutor is getting anywhere with these witnesses? Or do you think this is a strategic move on her part, calling these witnesses in her case in chief versus letting the defense call it and potentially making her look even worse? Let me know in the comments.